Page 17 basically talks about the linkage distances and getting those correct. For the correct sort of swing, a line recommends 19.5. That is exactly where I have my ball links, or balls for the linkages. 19.5 away from the center of the hub. So that's it there. So we're going to go on to page 18. Page 18 is the motor. So we've got to get HZ5. Let's put the set screw into position so we don't lose it. Okay. What you'll notice is on the motor you have a little groove there. That's where that set screw is going to meet up. Okay, now there will be a little bit of adjustment up and down here, which is what we need to ensure that the top of the gear is only 1 mil above the main gear. If you go too high, what will happen is you'll start riding on that edge there and you'll start damaging the main gear and you'll get binding and all kinds of things happening. So it's got to be precise and it's got to be right. So we can just nip that into position for now. Okay, so you can ride low or high. Okay, and we'll line it up and have a look at where it needs to be, whether it needs to be high or low, and then we'll fix that into position. So you have to pull it out, put it back in, do a few things to make sure it's absolutely right. Okay, so I've checked the positioning and it has to be all the way down. It cannot be up at all, so it has to be all the way down. So now what we're going to do is fix this into position, and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, I'm going to use a bit of the retaining compound specifically for pinions. You don't have to do this, but I go a little bit overboard sometimes, and so what I'm going to do is apply a bit of this onto the shaft at the top here. Don't need much of this at all, and that would be adequate. Again, the T43. Get that in position. As you can hear it click to the bottom. I'm going to fix that in nice and tight. Okay, and it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, wipe off any excess and we'll continue on to mount it inside the heli. Now the wires come out on one side here for the motor, and it depends on where you're going to mount your ESC as to which way you're going to face that. Personally, I'm going to be mounting the ESC over here. So my wire is going to point that way these wires will all link in together. I'll be passing them through that hole and out the bottom, and that's the way I'm going to mount it. If you want to mount your ESC underneath the battery tray, then you will have to point the wires the other direction. Personally, I don't want to put any more heat near the batteries. They're getting hot enough as it is. So it'll be mounted here outside, where it'll also get cooled. As I've mentioned before, You know I don't fix one side with any Loctite or CA for access reasons, and here's a classic example. I found it very hard to get these bolts in for the motor, so I pulled apart the frame so I can actually get in there and put these bolts in, because trying to get access to it from the top, as you can see there, it's rather difficult. You really don't have much room to do what you want. In here now I can put the Allen key in nicely. Got plenty of room to actually do what I want. I'll be able to see exactly where it meshes up, and I'll tighten it into position, put the frame back on, and make sure it's still meshing correctly with the main gear. Okay, so I've got my motor into the spot that I want. Found which part of the gear seems to be a little bit closer to the pinion, and I'll tell you, it was hard trying to find that spot. It's not like a 450 where you can find it fairly quick. On a 500 this is built very well and it's pretty uniform all the way around. If anything, it was just this spot where I've got it at now. So what I'm going to do is the old paper trick. Feed the paper in the gear and the pinion, so I get it in between the two, push it right up against there so it's nice and snug in there. I'll tighten these bolts up, pull the paper back out, and then I'll check to see how close it is, and it should be just spot on. So that's going to be pushed right up against it while I tighten it, so I'll have the pressure against it. That'll give me the distance of that paper as a clearance. As you can see there, the paper trick's done a great job. It's meshed perfectly in there. You can see just enough clearance, and that's what you want. You want it snug, but not to the point where it's binding. You can see a little bit of a gap. It's tiny, but that's all you need. That's at the tightest part of my gears. Okay, so now I've basically checked that the pinion's in the right spot. As you can see there, it's a little bit above the main gear, which is what you want, but not too far up. That's with the pinion right to the bottom of the set screw position. I've put the motor in with the wires pointing backwards, and I've basically temporarily put it back together again on one side just to make sure it still is meshing correctly, and I've looked through the top and the meshing is still perfect. So that concludes page 18.